This is a true horror story. Get your flashlights and blankets, and let's dig into this creepy horror story. Okay? Well, it actually began on the night of Halloween. You know, that time of year when everything is ghostly and awful, and kids are doing a joke out of it, trick or treating. But you should actually be quite wary of all the ghosts and zombies and vampires out there and other shit, because they actually do exist. And this is a story about what happens if you're not careful at Halloween. There was a girl. She was late trick-or-treating, and so she took a shortcut, rushing through a big, dark, windy graveyard. And you know, she was quite realistic, and she didn't believe. She did not believe at all. And so she ran through the graveyard, eager to get some candy. Oof, did she get some? She did get some, but it wasn't candy. No, not at all. The graveyard was so big, she ran out of breath, so she had to take a break. So she sat herself on a bench in the graveyard under a tree, and she could hear the wind whooshing in the branches. And then she heard a strange noise, like a wolf crying to the moon. Ooh, like that. You know, what good is a horror story without some wolf crying to the moon, right? But it actually did happen. But she thought to herself, there are no wolves here. Where did that come from? Well, she thought maybe it's just some pranky kid doing the noises, right? She will learn later on that she was wrong. But more of that later, because we're not there yet in the story, so continue listening. Well, when she had catched her breath, she stood up and felt quite a chill beneath her. She couldn't really put her finger on it, but then she suddenly felt this huge pain on her neck. It was like she's been stung by a really, really big bee. And she took her hand to her throat and looked at her hand and saw blood. So much blood. So she turned around, but there was no one there to be seen. She had to keep her hand on her throat, so she wouldn't bleed to death. Bleed to death in a graveyard. That would be epic, right? On Halloween. Not on her watch, she thought to herself. She was quite stupid, this little girl. She should have gone to Mama, right? Always go to Mama when you bleed. But she wanted that candy. She wanted that candy. She was all dressed up and everything, and it felt like it was stopping the bleeding. So she continued on and started to run again. She knew she was tired from before, but she started to feel this kind of numbing pain in her feet and her legs and in her back, and then it spread like throughout all of her body, and it was getting harder to breathe. And then she tripped on something. She thought it was just a branch, but she also felt like she was entangled in something. And when she turned her head, what did you see, you think? It was a hand on her ankle. Woo! It was a hand sticking out from the ground. Just bones. And how do I know? Because it was me. It was my head. I finally found a living person matching my DNA so I could rise from my grave, baby. I could rise from my grave. So nice. So nice. That's why you see me talking to you. The bite she had before was a vampire bite. And so she did survive. But she became a vampire. And that is what can happen if you're too eager to get your candy. You rise up the zombies and you get stung by a vampire to become a vampire yourself. But what about the wolfy cry, you wonder? I stood there after I crawled out of my grave over her, watching her turn into a vampire when the wolf cries began again. Ow! We heard, both of us. She couldn't do anything because she was in so much pain, turning, and I was climbing through my grave. But suddenly, it felt like the cries were getting closer, and I saw something with fur in the bushes. You know, I'm dead, so I can't be scared, but as she lay there, freakishly scared, turning into a vampire, it came closer and closer and closer. And when that ragged beast had come all the way up to her, she was screaming, both from pain and from fear. It was so exciting. It was so exciting. It was the best night in 1,000 years for me. So, yeah. It was a very great Halloween for me. But not so much for her, though, because as she lay there helpless in pain, the wolf came up to her, grabbed her by her wrist, and dragged her away. And all I could hear while I walked the other way was her screams. Ah, like that. And then I heard the sound of tearing flesh and intense screaming. Ah! I really wonder what really happened. Did she stay a vampire? Did she finally turn so she lived anyway? Or did the wolf eat her? I guess we'll never know. But what do I care? I've got this TikTok account now. And this Instagram account. And so, fuck her. That's that. She's either eaten or she's a vampire. Why don't you go to the graveyard and find out?